Since the Russo-Ukrainian war began in 2022, the cost of living in Russia has climbed sharply. Prices have risen, but that's only a part of the story. Everyday spending habits have shifted in ways you notice the moment you step into a supermarket. Familiar brands have vanished, their substitutes often cost more, and some items feel cheaper in quality because manufacturers have cut ingredients to hold prices steady. Parallel imports fill a few gaps, yet they tend to arrive with higher price tags and inconsistent supply. Recent VAT hikes have placed extra weight on basic expenses, and added charges on things like cars and electronics have raised costs long before buyers ever get to see the final bill. Moscow still works with remarkable efficiency, yet the era of effortless affordability is gone. Delivery arrives quickly, but no longer feels like a small indulgence. Taxis remain abundant, but the inexpensive rides of a few years ago have become a memory. Restaurants stay lively, although the lunch specials that once felt like pocket change now cost more than twice as much. Outside the capital, the pressure is heavier. Wages inch upwards at a slower pace while essentials climb faster. Domestic flights cost more. Hotels cost more. Electronics, clothing, cosmetics, and car parts now approach Western price levels. Rents have increased, mortgages hover around 20%, and monthly bills for mobile plans, internet, and utilities continue to rise. Even so, Russia has not become uniformly expensive. Certain items remain within reach, while others that used to be routine purchases now feel like small luxuries. So, how much has the cost of living truly changed? Which parts of daily life have shifted the most? How are people adapting? And in 2025, is Russia edging closer towards Western prices or settling into a new economic reality of its own? Welcome to Russia Unfiltered. I'm Jonny Tickle.
I'm James
I'm Jerry
Pearce.
Morris.
Nicely timed.
So today we're talking really about how, you often see in the press about economics and how it's affected Russia since 2022, but it rarely talks about how it's affected normal people and their normal lives. So, James, you live in Yekaterinburg. Why don't you
Yes.
tell me how you've noticed changes? What's different from now to before 2022?
The most obvious thing would be you go into the supermarket. Now, here's an anecdote for everybody, because I remember years ago, eggs was the big thing that was going to bring down the Putin regime. Now, they used to be, in fairness, it was 50 rubles for 10 eggs. Now it's more than 100. Okay. But that's with everything. Now, steak. Cost of beef has gone up quite a lot. Pork, which Russians eat lots of pork, that's gone up. And just the average shopping bill. Now, you used to be able to get away with about 2,000-3,000 a week. Now that's a small shop. I mean, that's the first thing you would notice. The second thing, I suppose, you would notice now, again, like my personal bills, utility bills, we don't pay a lot by Western standards. About 5,000 rubles a month, which is 50 quid. I'd love to pay 50 quid for my bills in the UK that I still have. But again, that's what it is now. The price of the flat doubled. I mean, we own the flat outright, but its value doubled. The rents have doubled. Salaries have gone up by about 22%, so it's affordable, but it's still, there's a squeeze. Is it the same, we'll talk about Moscow separately, but where Jeremy hangs out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of. We get into this, everybody gets into comparing things, right? And of course, we've got to try and do that. And certainly, I'm constantly comparing the cost of living between the UK, Denmark, and Russia for me personally. But just as valid as your statements are, James, I just don't know. Everybody's circumstances are completely different, right? So it would be hard to say something more than the cost of living, I think, for everybody in Russia has gone up a great deal, and we have these academic or pundit arguments, right, where people downplay the effect of inflation in Russia, and I've lost that argument because apparently everything's great in Russia, and it hasn't affected normal people's lives as much as I would argue. But what I would instead maybe just throw in there is that certainly the utilities mean that people that were ticking over, and they weren't saving money because, again, this is like this massive myth, or rather misunderstanding, right? So there is loads and loads of money in savings accounts in Russia, right? That's a fact.
Yeah.
Right? There's a huge overhang of savings. What people then misunderstand is they think that means that an average person, because we're talking about average people, that average people have lots of savings, and that's just not true. So it's preparing for this, like our talk, I was thinking, what can we contribute that isn't just going to result in people saying, "Oh, actually, my life's not like that," or "Actually, the people that I know are doing really well or doing really badly," right? And I thought that actually my contribution would be that life in Russia looks a lot like life in the UK, in fact, in that
in some respects,
there's lots of fancy cars, there's lots of people eating out, and that's true in this extremely depressed region of what is actually an okay area. Kaluga region has done pretty well for itself, right? But I live in a pretty poor area. There's plenty of rich people around, visibly consuming, but that would be completely absurd for pundits and journalists and academics to say, "Oh, well, that means that people have done really well out of the war." And that's how I feel in the UK. that there are lots of people. Like I gave a talk in London, and London looks richer than it's ever been before to me.
Well, that's a very good point, actually. It's like people look rich, they're acting rich. I mean, their shopping habits haven't changed substantially since prices. People are still buying the things they always bought, or they're buying Asian imported knockoffs of them. But yeah, purchasing power has gone up, but it had to go up. And I was checking just before we got on here. The number of mortgages given out the first few years of the war went up. The value of pensions went up in most regions. Most pensioners are getting more now, even though pensioners are still poor and treated very
poorer
badly.
than British pensioners, right?
And because British pensioners,
definitely much poorer.
Yeah.
Again, for our viewers who might not know, British pensioners are the poorest pensioners in purchasing power in Europe, right? So again, Britain is a very rich country full of poor people, right? And I always say the same about Russia, and people get really, really angry for various reasons. God knows why, because it's just a statement of fact. Russia is a really rich country. I know people, like I tweeted the other day, that somebody gave me £1,000 in cash to buy them some Birmingham cutlery from the Industrial Revolution, right? Because they thought that was chic. And then they forgot about it. This is somebody from Moscow, obviously. They forgot about it. And I said, "Don't you want this money back?" And they went, "What? You want to give me the money back?" Because I couldn't buy the cutlery, right? So when I talk about my life in Moscow to people in Kaluga region, they think that I'm talking about like somebody from Mars. When I talk about my life in Kaluga region to people that I know in Moscow, they don't believe me that Russia is such a poor country. And we're talking about Russian people. It just drives me bonkers. So this is a great topic. I'm glad we're talking about it.
I think one of the ways we can... I'm sure you've all had the same reaction where you talk about, "Oh, Russia's like this or Russia's like this." You'll get plenty of Russians who reply saying, "My life's not like that." And I think the way to really show that is that, okay, wages have gone up in Russia, while the cost of products has also gone up. But everyone hasn't got the same wage rise. No. Those wage rises are going to very like particular sectors of the economy, like the military and logistics and things like this. So those people working in those sectors are doing really, really well.
Yeah, they are.
But the price rises in the shops, that affects everybody. It doesn't matter if you've had a wage rise or not.
Yeah. Yeah, like, and Jeremy was mentioning about the UK, where we're all from, people can't really cut back on food. So that matters, and yes, as many historians will point out, it was the bread riots that brought down Nicholas II, and it was, long queues that brought down or helped bring down Gorbachev, I should say. There was many reasons for the collapse of the Soviet. Just to pick up on something John said here, because 22% of Russia doesn't have proper indoor plumbing. So a lot of the people that reply to us in the comments, well, my life's not like that. It's like, well, I bet you also have indoor plumbing as well. But, Sverdlovsk region is massive. There's a lot of people that probably don't have plumbing there. There's a lot of depopulating villages because, again, the cost of living in the middle of nowhere is also going to be quite high because you have to travel very far. You have to have a lot more resources just to get by. Another thing I would also just point out here as well, we talked in our last episode, Russia not being one thing, and I think this is, the Russian economy, the statistics that we all nitpick, two things can be true at once. People can have a higher standard of living, as Niall Ferguson pointed out, and that video's been doing the rounds. And the economy.
Sorry, what did he say, James? What did he say?
Niall Ferguson, yeah, this was at the.
I know who Niall Ferguson is. I sat next to him on a plane recently.
Yeah, well, if you haven't seen it, so there was an event back in September in Kiev, and he was sort of busting this myth that the Russian economy is collapsing. Now, and he made a good point. It is showing all the successes of a wartime economy, and, once that slows down, the economy has to, and that is true, and there probably is going to be a big housing crisis in Russia, big housing bubble burst. But again, these two things can be true at once. The UK's growth is sluggish, but, go on, I'm ranting.
No, housing, right? Go on, Johnny.
No, I think people always make these sort of historical comparisons like you brought up, James. But the reality is, this is not a story of empty shelves in Russia.
Not
it's
even
about
close.
Higher prices. It's about lower quality, and just maybe a smaller sense that you need to think a little bit extra about every routine purchase. That's the difference here. We're not talking about people not being able to survive and shops being empty and queues around the corner. So I don't want anyone thinking it's not bread riots or the end of the Soviet Union. It's just like subtle changes that really add up over time because it's been almost 4 years now.
And it's not 2014, because when I was living there and, you had the annexation of Crimea and, went from 60 rubles to the pound to about 114 in a day. Yeah, that was bad, but again, compared to 1998, it was a little crisis. Today, compared to, it's, as you said, it's I have to readjust. The fish comes from not Norway now, it comes from somewhere else. The beef, one thing as well, and I'll let Jeremy jump in here, because my book on the Golden Ring, if you look at Vladimir Oblast's government website, it says 100% of the beef in our shops come from Vladimir region. I thought, okay, well, that's not. Turns out pretty close to it, because they have, same with potatoes, we always check here. Go on, Jeremy.
Who eats meat? Again, things like eating meat, having a foreign car, owning a house that is not a house that you inherited. These are just incredibly. These are markers of the huge inequality that Russia exhibits in a way that other countries that are unequal but highly developed exhibit. And that's why, okay, I know the UK better than the United States, but I would also say it's probably true of the United States. Yeah, of course, I eat beef and pork and everything else in Russia, and I don't think about it. But people that I know never eat beef. Most people that I work with would never eat beef, ever. It would just be an astronomical, unaffordable thing. Yeah, they do. Again, it's almost like we should have like the chicken index, because there was a time when poor people ate chicken a lot in Russia, And those times have gone.
Right.
They started in the early 2000s, and it was like a real treat. People would say, Jeremy, I'm going to make this for you. You might not have had this before. It's something really special. And it was chicken drumsticks, because chicken farms, broiler plants, that was a big success in the early 2000s. And it's still, I mean, it brings back to another point that you made that I think we should talk about, which is people think that Russia can be really, really self-sufficient, and it is in some things, but still the cost of energy means that there's been huge inflation in food among domestic producers, such as chicken farms, right?
Yeah, and the cost of that, John mentioned restaurants, that's why the business lunch is no longer really pocket change, because, you know, you pay a price in everything versus the people coming in, and then there's also the, well, actually, my custom hasn't gone down. I could raise my prices and still make a ton more money. Sorry, John, go on.
Wasn't it always like a loss leader, though, the business lunch? I mean, it was like you're paying a Central Asian nothing to make some soup and boil up some groats and maybe have some chicken or some meat, and then you made the money on the beer or whatever.
Yeah.
Isn't that? Because again, I mean, business lunch. If I said that to somebody in Kaluga region, they wouldn't know what I was talking about. So it is a big city thing as well.
It is, yeah.
But I take what you say, James. It's like it's disappeared. Like affordable eating out in Moscow has almost disappeared, right? Maybe Johnny, you should say something about that.
No, it's definitely disappeared. We're even talking about fast food restaurants now, like the McDonald's replacement, Vkusny Tochka. It's like if you get a standard meal, that's costing you £6 or £7 maybe. What's that, like $10 or something?
Yeah, more than $8. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas
That's
in
mad.
pre-war, it was £2. It was like really, really cheap. It was
Something
like
like
you could like feed a family of four for a tenner basically, and it's not like that anymore.
I mean, we've still got
So just
street
the
food, though, right?
Yeah, but street food's not cheap. In fact, and I mean, a lot of the time that's like the hipster thing. It's like we don't want to go to McDonald's.
I haven't been
anymore.
to Moscow for a couple of years, just so I listen. I'm very much.
And I mean,
out
even
in
in
the
Kaluga,
sticks,
yeah, it would be like £5-6 for like to take a kebab out, right? Which again shows you it's a particular type of clientele. It's a particular class that that only a particular class can afford eating out anyway. So, like you said earlier, James, people have to count their pennies, right, when they're shopping in a way that they maybe some people always did, but more and more people have to.
I mean, we still have a lot of dive, like shashlik places on Mongol things, you know, like by bus stops and things. The ones that were all knocked down in Moscow, we still have those, and they're cheap and affordable. I mean,
Would you risk it?
I do. Well, yeah, I'll always risk anything for shashlik. But the flip side of that is, and here's another quick anecdote, because in the summer we went to, it's called Salvador. It's in the centre of Yekaterinburg. It's like a hipster restaurant. You get these tiny little portions for about 600 rubles, and the glass of wine costs as much. Whereas on the opposite side of the street, there's a new I shared a picture because there was a picture of Stalin on the wall. It's on my Twitter. But, like, that was cheaper, and it was so much better. And they make their own wine in there as well. They had, you know, like, and it was delicious. So, and that's the thing. It's like, we have just, I guess it's different for us. And we've also, again, talked about migration. You know, we have Caucasus migration towards the Urals. That's becoming a thing. You're seeing a lot more people wearing the hijab. But we're talking about the cost of living. Sorry. Stay focused.
I want to just bring up something else as well. While we're talking about food, supermarkets, restaurants, one of the things that has happened in the last 3 or 4 years is a lot of supermarket chains have rapidly expanded.
Yes. So
the Dacha village I go to every summer, it used to just be like an independent shop run by someone who lived in the village, and her custom is like gone because a Magnet opened next door, basically. And that Magnet is way cheaper. It's way cheaper because they've got the logistics. So it's interesting how a lot of ways the price of stuff has gone up. But if you live in these remote places, now a lot of the prices actually come down a little bit because you've got these huge logistics chains that are just incredibly impressive in very remote places of Russia. You see it the same with all like the delivery networks like Wildberries, Ozon. They can go to places that the Russian post will take a month to send you something. It takes them 3 days to send, which means that actually the price of some stuff and the convenience of some stuff has come down. Yeah, and it's because it's compared to this little village shop you used to go to, which obviously everything was marked up. Which I thought it's an interesting point to make.
That's exactly what happened in my place as well. Yeah, and actually, it's kind of I know what you're saying, Johnny, is right. It like depresses prices because of economies of scale, but there's obviously something sad about it as well because you also had a lot of...
The village shop is gone.
You lose the
You had a
character,
lot of cottage industry in food production in Russia. And so every morning when I went to work in the factory, not a joke, we would stop off at Tетya Tanya's and we would get these absolutely heavenly pirozhki, like pasties. And they would be 8 rubles each. And she had been up all night with her relatives making them in a kind of, cottage industry. And it was just divine, absolutely divine home-baked food. And of course, that's all gone because of exactly what you said, Johnny. People may value these things, but essentially it comes down to price. And the quality is less. The quality is terrible in a lot of these Russian supermarkets. I mean, like, really terrible. Like, British people like to complain about supermarket quality going down, right? But the democratization of mass consumption in supermarkets, which is a positive thing because Russia is a poor country, actually has its downsides.
Well, about that, I wonder if tastes are going to change as well, just because, again, they've had to get, the bananas come from another place and they're more expensive and the quality is less. The cheese, the stuff they're making themselves isn't that good. It tastes very acidic-y.
Oh, that's a controversial statement, James.
I love my cheese.
You're going to get a lot of hate for that. You're going to get so much hate for that. Cheat, Russian cheat. I said that, and people never forgave me for saying.
No, Russian cheese that's from Russia is good. Russian Parmesan, and I remember in 2015 as well seeing Belarusian Parmesan because obviously the sanctions it had, and Belarus wasn't sanctioned. That was. Yeah, those were the days, right? But no, I wonder if tastes are going to change, and also again, sources of income, just because PayPal doesn't work anymore. A lot of Russians that had these cottage industries, they got money from, they've had to rethink that now, and so you lose that income, which affects things. But I mean, I guess it's just the domestic, because you lose the international market as well. But about the changing taste, because again, like 1930s boiled beef was popular because it was all people could afford and because there were shortages. And I wonder what, because of the economic situation now, how tastes will again evolve.
That's an interesting point. I'm sure they will. In response to
the economy, yeah.
Well, one of the ways that supermarkets are competing now is if you go get freshly baked bread from a supermarket, it's pretty good. It's like they do. So they are changing. It's almost like this sort of American sort of Walmart model where your supermarket has become an everything shop.
Yes.
So I mean, bakeries do exist, and they're actually everywhere. They're actually quite popular. But if you go into a supermarket, it really sells everything.
Yeah, it
so
sells
people
your
don't
snow
go
shovels,
to the specialist shops anymore.
Yeah, school uniform, books. I mean, you go to an OK or an Ashan, you can get your winter boots, and you can get your eggs, and you can get, toys. It's
Yeah, and I think. I was trying to maybe move on from food.
Yes.
Because there's other ways that cost of living is increased. And one of those ways is because of things stop coming from the West that people actually need. So one example of this is when it comes to cars. If you have a foreign car and your car breaks down or you need a part, there is no substitution you can get. You have to wait 3 or 4 weeks and pay triple the price to get that part to come. And then it's also the same with electronics. People don't want to buy Russian electronics. They want to get the imported stuff. There's
They
still this
still want- yeah.
sort of there's still this idea that German stuff is really high quality.
Sure.
And
sure.
people
Can you
want to
buy?
get the German stuff.
Are there Russian electronics though?
Yeah.
Is that really true?
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of it's
what-
like white labeled Chinese stuff.
Oh, okay.
Medicine's
Yeah,
another
with
one as
like-
well. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Stay with the electronics for a bit.
No, it's
no, you're
imported.
right.
So yeah.
Yeah, you can talk about medicines. You're right, because that's also changed.
Because it's one of the things that isn't sanctioned. People that watch this might not know. Medicine is not sanctioned, nor should it be. Nor
Which is
should
why-
food. Right.
Which is why the Danish Novo Nordisk company is still operating.
Which
in
is why a
Kaluga
lot
region.
of companies still operate. Yes.
So little anecdote to show you how insane the world is, and it is off topic, Johnny. Sorry. I met one of my colleagues 2 days ago, and she said, "So you've been in Russia," and she works on Russia, by the way. You've been in Russia since 2022. I'm like, yeah. And she said, doesn't your employer have a problem with that? And haven't you got into a lot of trouble with that? And I said to her, well, the most successful Danish company of all time still has a factory with quite a lot of Danes in it, working less than 20 kilometers from where I live, from where I live in Russia.
And the Swedish car company.
Blank look,
yeah.
blank, uncomprehending look that I wasn't, I hadn't been fired. I hadn't been investigated by the security services of Denmark for doing my job and for having a life
maybe you have been.
For having a life that is in more than one country. This is not
Yes.
something that is it's not something that's genuinely accepted in Denmark.
And as well, we can talk about all these prices going up, but there are many other reasons that the price have gone up. Like corporate tax went up from 20 to 25%. VAT has gone up.
VAT,
It's going up it's going up in January to 22%.
Yes.
And also pre-war in 2021, Russia moved away from the old flat 13% basic income tax for everyone and it introduced a more layered structure. It actually just introduced one more layer at 15%, and now
Which was long overdue.
expanded. Yeah, but now it's expanding. Now there's it's like a real sort of Western style progressive tax system, which goes up to 22% for the highest earners. So
just a bit more
tax has gone
context
up.
for people. Just a bit more context for people that might not know, because again, it was introduced that flat tax rate because nobody was paying any taxes in the 90s, and they needed some sort of state revenue because it was being stolen and sent overseas and put into Swiss or New York banks. So I mean, they kept it, but there's other things like that as well. For instance, when you get a Russia visa, you have to do HIV test. That was a 90s thing because the rate of HIV went up, but they just never got rid of it. So I was going to say something else then, but Jeremy, I can see you're itching to...
No, I'm always itching.
Oh, fair enough. So many jokes I could make there, but also just again back to
not because of any not because of any communicable diseases. I hasten to add.
Fair enough.
But well, no. I mean, I can just say something about those two things. Yeah, I mean, still HIV. The reason that foreigners have to have an HIV test is yes, bureaucratic drag, as you kind of put it, James, which is once they have an unpleasant and irrational rule, it's very, very hard to get rid of it, especially
and
because
it costs money. Yeah,
it makes money for
It makes
somebody.
money, yeah.
So it's a rentier economy, like Britain. It's an economy for people to collect economic rents rather than working, right? If they're lucky, right? And so medical tests, it's a great example that it's not just foreigners, right? Many large corporations will require their staff to have all kinds of medical tests.
Education,
In the old car plants in Kaluga, they breathalyzed people on entry to the car plant a few years ago. And that didn't cost them money, but it's the same principle.
It was a perestroika thing because they banned drinking during working hours. When was it, 86 or something? Because I mean, they actually had to ban that. But I mean, coming back to prices have gone up for a lot of reasons, and back to the medicine thing. Now, a lot of medicine that comes to Russia from the UK, it's got to make massive detours, and you pay a price for these things. So it's paying the Shadow Fleet, which still docks in Tilbury or Hull, you know. Never mind the spy ships in the English Channel. You know, these things are still docking. They have to go through Turkey, and the Turks have got to be paid, and they want their cut. But what does that mean in terms of people's livelihoods? Now, who do you blame for, you know, English medicine that your daughter needs for going up? Do you blame the Brits or do you blame Putin? A lot of people are going to blame the country it's coming from.
There is a difference, though,
do.
isn't there, between... I mean, we should also say that, once again, there has been onshoring of quite a lot of pharmaceuticals. And again, the Novo Nordisk is maybe an unfair example, because essentially it's a Russian factory making diabetes medicine for the Russian market, owned by Danes. So it's not so relevant, although, I mean, I would be interested in what you guys have to say about that, because certainly there are medicine shortages, and certainly there are treatments that require imported technology, not necessarily medicine, that are not available unless you're rich, unless you've got money, unless you live in Moscow.
Yeah.
Is there something you know more about? Because it's different from what Johnny was saying, which is short car parts for Volkswagens. That has to go on a shadow fleet, as you say, is essentially, James.
I mean,
or has to come through Kazakhstan, all right?
Yeah,
well,
Ozempic,
is...
which... Well, it's prohibitively, or whatever the word is, expensive.
Can't they make a generic from Ozempic in the Russian market?
No, they have loads of generic replacements.
That's where I was going with it. Yeah.
It's really popular.
Yeah, it's now becoming more popular. I haven't looked at gym memberships because, again, the cost of gym, which this is an interesting thing. I mean, gyms are providing the same service. You know, that doesn't really change. Those memberships go up, but when you get these drugs on the Russian market, people will start going less because they don't need to eat better and take care of themselves, really, do they? And then that has a knock-on effect with the sports chains selling. Yeah, I mean, these things will all... But again, is that a Russian thing? No, that's a thing that will affect the whole world when these drugs are widely accessible outside of certain circles.
I think, though, the thing that's happening right now is, yes, prices are going up because of imports and the cost of importing and the cost of parallel imports. And then on top of that, you have new taxes. And then on top of that as well, you have extra fees, like for cars and electronics and household appliances, much higher import duties now. They have like some utilization fee for cars and things like this. It just keeps adding bits and bits and bits up. So there's the price of a lot of stuff is just like going up. Yeah, a lot of hidden taxes, tiny little things that add up to make things not nowhere near as affordable as they used to be.
And the utilization tax, essentially it's saying we're going to put a massive fee on your purchase price to push forward the eventual cost of recycling this incredibly polluting piece of metal and oil, right? But what ticks people off is that, of course, they know, living in a state like Russia, that, of course, that car's not going to be recycled because there's no way you could recycle a car in Russia adequately. So, or that economic rent from recycling the car is going to be captured by sub-elites. So people get really... even more than the UK. So people in the UK hate paying council tax because they perceive, rightly or wrongly, that it's wasted, right? That it goes to pay the pensions of council workers, which is not really true.
No.
And what's interesting in Russia is it's the same cynicism, right? People get really angry. They get more angry about that example that you gave, the purchase price of a car increasing by 20% because of this spurious recycling tax. They get more angry about that than they get about the fact that they pay whatever, a very small income tax, and a millionaire only pays what is it now, 16, 17, 18% tax,
Yeah.
income tax.
And on top of that, I mean, like, people get more angry with Johnny mentioned it in his intro, Yandex taxi rides. Now, for us, it used to be a couple of 100 rubles from the centre to now it's... And you have to think about this because, it's cold in the winter. It's like, oh, do I want to get a taxi home? I'm going to need a taxi home, especially if there's, the lesser public transport infrastructure. Vladimir, I remember it didn't have Yandex Taxi until, like, just before COVID. And then, oh my God, it was like pennies to go from one side to the other. And this is a small town. Yekaterinburg, it was more expensive, but even when I lived in Kralutskaya in Moscow, I remember it was about 500 rubles from, say, I don't know, Ploshad Revolucji to Kralutsk, which is around the Kremlin. It wasn't that much.
That's 1,000 at least now.
At least 1,000,
It's
which
doubled
is still
or trebled in Moscow.
Yeah, now don't get me wrong, it's a tenner, but and in London that cab fare would be
Astronomical, right?
Forget about it, but it's not the point. It's it's like, oh, maybe I'll just get the metro and I won't stay out later.
James, the point is that again, that increase in price is not actually reflecting significantly higher incomes for the Yandex drivers.
No, it's not.
It's an economic rent captured by economic elites that have regime.
Or if you read certain
patronage.
newspapers, it's Yandex Taxi with their KGB cameras in there spying on foreigners.
Well, of course, Yandex makes it very, very easy to find out where anybody is if one should require that information. Sure.
Yeah, but
that's because they keep leaking all their info.
Exactly, because you can buy information about anybody you like in Russia still.
No, just before the war in 2021, Yandex Yeda, or their food
delivery app,
database leaked. It leaked, so everyone could see how much everyone in every apartment in the whole of Russia had spent on food deliveries. And one of the problems with that was it also leaked the comments that people put with the food deliveries. So often it was like the codes to your door entrance and stuff like that, and it was just like leaked for the whole internet to see. Yeah. And now you can get that just by paying. You could pay data brokers for that kind of thing. But this one was leaked to the whole internet for anyone to see.
Yeah, it was a goldmine for journalists. And I believe the BBC Russia did an investigation using that same leak. Like during one protest, there was some police brutality and they found the guy who was... that's on the BBC's website. I'll let you look at that. It's not connected to what we're doing, but sometimes we just make little tangents. What's interesting as well is, again, like, because with these taxes and things they pay for, like RT, or they might pay for... various other things.
Well, the vast majority of it...
Yeah.
The vast majority of it is paying for the war effort, isn't it? To pay for soldiers' wages.
Yeah. And some of that is local as well. But again, people are not stupid. It's not bringing them out onto the streets. And I think that we do need to make this point is, if people were that upset, there are ways of...
Well, it's not bringing people out onto the street, no. But has it brought people out onto the street in democratic countries?
No.
Fact that,
right, this is where I was going with that.
Your average water bill in the UK has increased by 100% since 2021. Your average council tax has gone up by 50% in the UK over the last 6 or 7 years, and electricity has more than doubled, right? And we're not going out on the streets. Although, I guess there are farmers... There are some farmers blocking ambulances in central London now and again because they might have to pay inheritance tax. But so your point, James, you anticipated was that people aren't, protesting about the cost of living. But there is a precedent, right, in history, and that is wage arrears. Again, something that is hard to explain to people from countries that have never experienced this, but there's quite a lot of wage arrears going on in the Russian economy again, which really puts paid to the kind of...
as well.
Yeah, exactly, which is essentially a form of wage arrears by other means, right? So the Niall Fergusons of this world should maybe read a little bit more and inform themselves a bit better, because there's significant wage arrears already, and they're coming down the pipe, even in industries that you wouldn't expect them to be. Right? There was actually a big write-up about this last week in Fontanka, the St. Petersburg web portal. Right, $3.7 million of wage arrears just in one Leningrad region business alone, and 400% rise in small business wage arrears in the last year. That one was via Medusa, and it also makes me just think how, going back to our fundamental point that we began with, that there are people that are getting their wages. So you could be in waged work, right, in Russia, and you can live extremely well if you are getting a kind of indexed to inflation, indexed to the foreign currency exchange rates, right? But actually, if you're just a bloke doing your, hit machine with spanner until it works again, churning out, metal parts in a factory, right? Yeah, your income has gone up, but in terms of its relationship, its indexation against real inflation, you're poorer than you were in 2022. You're, in fact, poorer than you were in 2018, and you're probably only about where you were in 2013. And that's the point that Nick Trickett makes in his book that's coming out, Empire of Austerity, that's coming out in spring. But his like mine is a voice crying in the wilderness.
Well, I'll just say that, I mean, a lot of these things we've been talking about is, and this goes back to a previous video we made on what experts get wrong, is there's often a habit to frame these things as uniquely Russian problems. And they're not always. Sometimes they're just happening in most industrialized, modernized countries. Another example, most of Russia's regions are running fiscal deficits. Okay, now, how many US states are running deficits? It's more than most, more than half, getting to more than it should be. How many English councils? A lot of them are going bankrupt. That's been, I mean, and we just need to be a bit more careful is all I'm saying. If you're one of these people who works in that industry, this is not a Russian problem. It's a problem of the 21st century. How do we fund local government? How do we, pay people fairly? Because the UK minimum wage is now £12.71, which works out at 26 grand a year, which I don't know. I think that's a bit much if you work in McDonald's. That's just my personal opinion. Go on, Johnny.
Ooh, James. You're going to get in trouble.
I'm good, yeah.
Well, I disagree with that, but let's move swiftly on. I think what really this all comes down to is inequality, social inequality, and I guess I would say the widening gap between people who can absorb price rises and those who can't. I think one of the problems that many people, foreign experts, commentators have is obviously they're not here, so they can't see it. And I think for them, sort of Moscow's wealth sort of hides the reality.
Yeah. But
then I think if you were actually in Moscow, you'd realize there's loads of struggling people in Moscow too.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. So there's, I think when people often talk about like this real big difference between Moscow and the regions, and of course there are differences, but Moscow is just like London or New York, where there's lots of very, very wealthy people, but there's loads of people who are really struggling to make ends meet.
A lot of people live in общежития still. Actually, they still exist.
Hostels, essentially.
They're like essentially hostels for young people to rent a room. Often they share a room and they share a bathroom.
Yeah, it's perfectly normal to share a room. So again, British people could complain as much as they like about their $2,500 rents in Zone 4 of London. But yeah, I know people that are working 45 hours a week in Moscow that are sharing a bedroom. Yeah. Not a flat, a flipping bedroom.
Mm. Yeah, and we should probably mention as well, because you get, this has been written about, the family grants that you get if people are not having more children because they get a bit of extra cash.
That, James, is a great point, because that's a great example of how academics say, oh, the state is giving people $10,000 to have babies. Obviously, they're going to have babies. Childless academics making this argument who are on 100 grand a year and who are not going to have kids themselves
Just
think
to clarify
that 10
as well,
grand is going to make a difference.
Yeah, 10 grand's not going to make a difference. Just to clarify two things as well. One, I mean, I'm not saying McDonald's people shouldn't be paid fairly. I'm saying everyone should be paid fairly.
We're not going to judge you.
If you're going to pay them that much, you should be paying others more as well.
James, you know what it is? The problem is that you don't pay any tax until you earn quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
In Britain, in comparison to, say,
of course, yeah,
other European countries.
So
right?
you can be better off. Where was I going with that?
Sorry, I interrupted you again.
Yeah, you distracted me. I was going to make a really good point, and it was going to be the other thing, about this child payments. It's different for every region, which again, poverty is different in each region. The flats are different, but also, just this is a common sense thing. If you are having children if you have 5 children not to pay tax, you are an idiot.
You're poor.
You are an idiot, yeah.
In any country.
Sorry, yeah. Go on, Johnny.
Yeah, I think what really sums all of this up about the cost of living here is that a lot of people are having to go through, I suppose you could call it a sort of lifestyle downsizing. People who had very, very, very comfortable, easy lives are now, they're not destitute, but they've had to downsize lots of things just out of the practicalities. People shifting from restaurants to cooking at home. The sorts of this, because of the cheapness of things like wild berries, people can easily buy very cheap replacements.
What is wild berries?
Otherwise, so wild berries is basically like Amazon. But
there's wild berries on Ozon, yeah.
Yeah, but it's absolutely everywhere. It's ubiquitous, and because it's like so cheap, there's a lot of crap as well. So people will buy worse quality things because it's cheap. Whereas I guess in the Soviet Union, things used to last longer, and people had a sort of repair mentality. Well, that's certainly not the case, and it's not because people don't want to repair things. It's because that thing that you would repair to last 20 years costs so much more now. You can just get a Chinese crappy version for a few quid. So I think that in reality, that's what we're seeing today as a sort of summary, is that people have to downsize in many different ways. So it's not like it's not like a revolutionary sort of scenario where people are really struggling, but people just have to think about the prices in ways they never did.
Except for people that have assets, and they are the exception, right?
Yes.
So if you had more than one flat, if you have, and again, you could have inherited 2 flats if you were an only child, or maybe even 3 flats from the Soviet period. If you have a small, medium business and you are essentially not waged, they are the winners of this situation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's right. If you own property, then you're laughing because rents have gone up so much. And say if you're paying a mortgage, a pre-war mortgage of 6 or 7%
free
interest.
money.
Yeah, it might as well be, because normal interest rates now are 20-odd%. You can charge double the rent. That's your mortgage doubled. Basically, you can pay it off a lot quicker, or
there's
put it in a
not
bank
really
account.
any capital gains tax, or I mean, you can get
when
away
you try
with
and
hiding
explain
that money.
what capital gains tax is to your average Russian person, they think that you are insane and that they've had a stroke.
Yeah, they think it's theft. Yeah, which.
Yeah, so I think to finish off, I'd like to ask you both really about what you've seen, I guess with your own eyes, about the emotional and cultural impact of all of these changes, like the reality you've seen with your own eyes, rather than just like facts and figures.
Yeah.
I mean, how have you seen people change? How have you seen the way people act differ?
I mean, I would say people have just hunkered down, and that's one thing you do notice. Again, it's a historical pattern in Russia. When things get tough, people do hunker down, and they do start to, they're very good at adapting. And again, this isn't just me saying this as somebody who is pro-Russia or whatever. Andrei Kolesnikov wrote a very good article for Carnegie about how Russians have adapted to the new economic situation. And yeah, I mean, it is just a case of, we're going to get through each day at a time. It's not next week. It's not next year. It's let's get through this week. That's changed. Whereas people used to be a bit more, next week, I can think about that. Or I can. Another thing, I suppose, as well, I mean, the tourism industry is doing quite well. I mean, people are getting to know their country a bit better. They're travelling locally a lot more. That's not a bad thing, I don't think. So, go on, Jeremy.
Yeah, terpenia, patience, endurance. This was a word that British sociologists used in the 1990s. In particular, there's even a book by a British sociologist that said, how do we understand how working class people on low wages, blue collar workers experienced the 1990s? And it was endless endurance or patience. And maybe that will come back. Maybe that is already what's coming back. Seems to be what James was saying. I would say something a little slightly different. I would say that I think there was this huge moral shock in 2022 among the majority of people. How is this possible that this happened, right? That a small cabal took a particular decision without that caught most people, completely unawares within Russia because it had no real logic behind it. Now, the economic shock has been unfolding in these variegated ways that we talked about today. But I would say that while I agree with James, I think people still haven't really cognitively, emotionally found a way to kind of deal with all of these changes because they're still ongoing and there's no end in sight, right? And that for me is something that's interesting.
Yeah, there's no end in sight, and for the last few, it'll be over next. It'll be over. Sort of, people have been disappointed.
People put their eggs in that basket, and that was a really, really, really silly thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just to finish off, I'd like to say, I guess it's not really an anecdote, but just all these anecdotes I've got added together is I've met so many people in Moscow who had really great dreams pre-war, getting married, having kids, traveling to here, traveling to there. And now I know so many people who just put they put their life on hold, basically. And I've heard it so many times. Oh, when it finishes, we'll do this. When it finishes, we'll do this.
We can't think about that now, right? We don't have the headspace for it now.
Yeah, and I think and that's one of the saddest things I see on a sort of day-to-day level is that people have just sort of given up dreaming. They've given up on their goals, their desires, their wants because they don't see a way that things are going to change quickly, and they don't see how their money situation will improve. They don't have the money to put aside to savings to, I don't know, buy an engagement ring or go on that holiday. So I had to say that I think that that's really the main emotional really impact that I've seen of that on a day-to-day life from friends, acquaintances here in Moscow. And with that, let's, I guess, finish. So goodbye.